Welcome back to another special edition of Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock. We're up in northeastern Washington visiting for 4th of July, and a lot of friends and family got to come up, and we're having a good time, and it's a lot cooler than being in Arizona, I'll tell you that. Well, we just finished celebrating 4th of July yesterday. It's July 5th. And we have Justin Olson up here, has been a good friend and helped a lot with the show and prep. And we're going to be talking about podcasting and such today with AJ and Jarmo. And Jarmo is from Finland, and we in the pre-show we were talking a little bit about what he's been doing, and this was the question that I wanted to get to. We can get deep into podcasting in general, but we had just done a 4-hour or more show with Dr. Frank Tamburi and I, and one of the things that's come up is we're always, Jarmo, I know he works on. He's a conspiracy analyst, Okay, well, you analyzing conspiracies. I mean, are there any conspiracies left? I mean, they all came true. So, I mean, we need some new ones. But we were talking about the movie that highlighted the Sound of Freedom, that highlights the sex trafficking of children. And there's so much information. We don't have to get deep into that other than if you're doing conspiracies, are you discussing that issue? And if not, why not? Because I've been exposed to this. I've been doing this 35 years, and it's a constant theme with all of these sociopaths, psychopaths, shiny badge wearing government scumbag, corporate, whatever the heck. And it's always a common theme. It since the Daddy Bush White House with the Franklin scandal. He was head of the CIA, and definitely, he used this to their advantage. Then you get Epstein. Epstein coming out and using this for blackmail purposes. We talked about a lot of different things. Then there's Pizzagate came out, and this is where, my adult children, having children come across this. Dad, did you know about this? I go, yeah, when I was talking about pointy horn, pointy blood-dripping fang, pointy tail people, this is what I was talking about. So now that this has become one of the conspiracies that needs to be not a conspiracy anymore. It's a factual thing. I was wanting to get from Jarmo that does do podcast in Finland. He's talked about maybe, he's kind of going down this road. So go ahead and, Jarmo, talk to me about the other conspiracies that you focus on and why you think you need to devote some time to this particular one and why now.
Well, I've covered a lot. I'd like to set myself these boundaries that there's no boundaries. There's no taboos that you can't talk about it. And I've come across with this issue a lot of times, and it's been going on for thousands of years. There's nothing new under the sun in that case, or any other case for that matter. And I will be doing on my own podcast. I will do a few shows that are focused on this because I can't stay silent anymore publicly. I've talked about this with my friends and acquaintances and with my family. And one thing that I've noticed that this issue is too dark. It's too much for the most of people. It's easier to brush it away. Yeah. It doesn't exist, or it's a conspiracy theory. But the thing is that it's not a theory. It's a true conspiracy. True evil is going on. And the most sickening thing for me is that adult people are taking advantage from the innocent. They are destroying innocence. And that is just, you have to talk about it. And actually you have to not just talk about it, you have to do something about it. Like, I have a 7-year-old daughter, and I've thought about this a lot. That if something, not necessarily this evil happens, but if something, somebody tries to grab her or something like that, then I drop the gloves. And you have to prepare yourself mentally for this. Because like in Finland, we are so secure country that they have literally outsourced their self-defense to the police. But if you are not capable mentally and physically defend yourself, then you're just another victim when the push comes to shove.
Well, this, tackling this issue in the past, the only defense I had for not doing it is because it is dark. I've done, several shows over the decades, with authors and people experienced with the issue and so on, but I never made it a main focus, not because I didn't think it was important or all these scumbags that we're dealing with. It's not uncommon to find that they're this kind of abusive to children just as much as they're abusive to adults in society. And they're just, psychopaths, sociopaths that are just damn. But because there hasn't been the ability to store the data, there hasn't been the ability to make sure that the research is always available, that it wasn't censored, deleted, edited. So I have to ask, if you're going down this road, what is the data storage mechanism by which you think that you will store the data? You're putting it up on, Facebook and YouTube, and that you're going to discover some great individual, get a great interview, some great evidence, and then it's going to last? Or you have some other mechanism by which you're storing the data? How do you think you're going to retain this information for the masses?
You have to capture all the news. Like in 2014, there was this big case in Norway. Actually, I was living in Norway at the time, and there were like something like 50 people got arrested. There were like police chiefs, lawyers, judges, all the upper tier citizens were involved in this child abuse ring. And I just stored all the news that I had. I had it on my hard drive, and I'll be using it in my shows, upcoming shows. And you have to just store it because they disappear for sure. Like in 1 or 2 years, there's nothing anymore. And that's a sign also that somebody is controlling it.
Yeah, Google.
Somebody wants to guard their back, that this issue don't come back haunt them.
Yeah, that's one thing that my only defense I had for the question was that I've been focusing on the permanent storage of data that can be accessible anywhere. And one that we've been developing for the past few years is Interplanetary File System, IPFS, to where it's noted around the world, and it's a name of a file that's replicated all over, that you put that hash in and it shows up, as opposed to a server that's an address somewhere that they can go get it taken off, or Hellfire Missile Year or something like that. So this has been, I want to talk to you about, it's not just that issue, but it's that kind of sensitive data. It's why Julian Assange is sitting in prison right now. It's Ross Ulbricht creates a web page that you can do crypto purchasing of different items and barter and have a free market. They're like, oh, heck no. Then you have, like Snowden. He comes out with the information of how their surveillance. Oh, and you're done. Bradley Manning says, look what they did to these reported out, and Assange publishing it. Yep, nope, you're gone. I guess, Bradley Manning got off because he's, transvestite, so you get off if you're that, But this has been so obvious that people that have chosen podcasting as a mechanism for sharing this kinds of information, that the mechanism by which you store the data, how you share it, what's people, the way they access it, that they're coming after that. So I'm been working on making sure that whatever you come across or you create the data, that it can be available for the future, for generations. And a lot of people, they'll say it, they get it off their chest. Hey, I said it, got a copy of it here, but it doesn't mean anything if nobody has access to the data. So, AJ, I want to ask you, what's your comment on that? If you're putting, you and Justin and Jarmo taking this information and having it, and you come across a lot of great conversations and you want it to be shared, are you looking at that as an important part of storing the data? Do you have plans, or are you just, aren't aware or you're looking for the next one. Tell me what your input on that issue is.
Well, sorry. Yeah, so just to briefly introduce myself. So, yeah, I'm AJ and I'm currently based in the UK, on the outskirts of Liverpool, with all the Beatles there, the Yellow Submarine. But I was born in Belgium and, sort of spent a few years there, but then traveled to Peru or South America with my parents as a kid. Stayed there for about 5 years. Then went back to Belgium, finished my studies, and then ended up working in a big multinational, you could say international corporate financial services bank, for which my customers were the likes of JP Morgan and Goldman Sachs and all the lovely people in the world, who are not at all involved with Jeffrey Epstein's accounts right now. But anyway, long story short is I found my way sort of towards the UK. But so just listening to your conversation, obviously you probably know. If not, well, it's a good place to start as well. Is to look into a guy that was called Marc Dutroux, and he was Belgium's sort of prolific pedophile in the 90s. And it was just like Epstein, it was sort of completely pushed aside by it. So here it went to the court cases. So it's not quite the same, I guess, as Jeffrey Epstein, but it's along the same lines.
Did they publish the client list?
Well, no, just like, yeah, just like what's her name, Ghislaine Maxwell's client list. It'd be good to see what personal numbers she had and connections and stuff. But yeah, so just to give you an idea of how big it was in Belgium, is that so this sort of thing happened. It was in the early 90s. So I've just did a quick search just to get my dates correct. So he was arrested, or actually, sorry, initially convicted for the abduction and rape of 5 young girls in 1989, and then released on parole after just 3 years of imprisonment. He was then arrested again in 1996 on suspicion of having abducted, tortured, and sexually abused 6 girls aged between 8
God.
and 19. But it wasn't just that. So the more
But
things were
wait,
coming
there's
out,
more? I mean, what do you
yeah.
mean it wasn't just that? He was doing other nefarious things or what?
Well, it's the circle of people that was around him. He was having like parties with
Yeah.
wealthy people, whether it was politicians or wealthy families or whatever it was. These parties were taking places in, you could say, big mansions types of properties. And so when this sort of thing went to court, it had to be passed on to multiple judges. Some judges stepped down, some prosecutors had to resign, etc., etc., because there were some names that we still don't know about them today, but there were names of highly, well, political people, and MPs, and just to sort of do a bit of a jump across the English Channel. They also had scandals in the UK as well. There was what was his name, Cyril Smith, and I believe that was around in the 70s and 80s. So it goes up to the top of the political spectrum, you could say. And
Yeah,
so,
Prince Andrew.
yeah, all the way. There you go. Right there you go. So, I mean, not just Prince Andrew. When you look at one of King Charles now, one of his very good friends, a guy called Jimmy Savile, he was involved with the BBC, and he had a children's program as well. And so it was only after his death that everything started coming out. But he was, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was going to be Prince William's godfather. So that's how close he was to Prince Charles at the time. So yeah, it goes up to the top. So to try and come back to your question, when you asked me originally or at the beginning, how do you record these things? What's your method, or do you record this? Well, yes, and I've sort of did it instinctively, if you can say that. I just thought these things I need to save these on a hard drive and maybe multiple hard drives. And just to name drop somebody, James Corbett did an episode. This was probably last year, maybe the year before, called the Library of Alexandria. So encouraging people to actually go out there and save the stuff on a independent hard drive if you can. Because let's face it, the internet's not going to disappear. Whatever the next version of the internet's going to be in the future, you're going to have to still try and spread the word, so to speak, right?
Yeah, James and I do a show every other week. We just did a show last night, as a matter of fact, and we saved all of his stuff a year ago on IPFS, and now we're trying to make it where it's more automated. Anything new that he does, we have it, and he and I are on the same page on this kind of stuff. But I'm glad that you're seeing that it needs to be saved, that it needs to be, but also not just saved, readily accessible. And you're starting to find out that, and instead of focusing on the child sex trafficking issue, we spend a lot of time on it today, but it's more the information when it comes to important things like that. And as we're getting into war, you think censorship's bad now. You just wait until war and 24. I mean, a 24 election cycle in America, they definitely don't want to be talking about things they don't want to talk about. So this is, as you guys do your podcast and you have conversations and you start getting more notoriety, you start talking to more interesting people and interesting subjects, they're going to come after you. I was subpoenaed to the January 6th thing in Washington because they wanted to insist that I certify one of the interviews that I did on January 6th with some of the guys in Washington that didn't even go in. And they're convicted and going to jail. They didn't even go in, So it's just, and I'm like, nope, not doing it. Fifth Amendment, I say no. Now what are you going to do? Well, they finally subpoenaed me. They kept threatening me. And I go, you have to explain it to me. How is it that I don't have a Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate, on a show you want me to certify that I'm on? Well, I called their bluff. I was willing to do time. And finally, damn it, he's not going to do it and you can go home. But but a lot of people, I mentioned that because I want to make sure people like you guys, and I don't know how it is in different countries, that you're able to say no. And I was willing to do some time to make the point. I just want them to say it, make them say it, that you have to do this. But in United Kingdom, it's a little bit different. That you can have the Crown comes in and they put some kind of a red tag on information or something. If you're talking about stuff, they can prevent you from archiving it or sharing it or something. Explain that. What are the laws of the United Kingdom for when you come across some juicy, you uncovered something? How limited are you?
That is a very good question. And to be honest, I am not very familiar with those laws. So so as I said, I've only just sort of come over to the United Kingdom, and that was probably around mid 2019, and then the whole half a year later the whole COVID stuff happened, and I haven't really had the time to actually explore it all and to the ins and outs of it all. But I do know a few people that have been involved with court cases of the past, whatever grievances they had. And we've also got the sovereign sort of movement in the UK, which here is based off the common law and Magna Carta from back in the day. So there are people that are trying to make the police aware. What is it that they're supposed to be protecting or defending, right? And you probably know, but the English police are quite are very polite compared to probably some of the police forces you've got over in the US, and definitely more polite than what the French police are doing right now. They always seem to be prepared to at least have a conversation up to a point, but then when I reckon when it comes to having information in your own home, they will come around probably with some sort of warrant, and they'll knock on your door and they'll ask you to cooperate, and if you don't, well, they'll drag you out. But just in an example of, for example, a house eviction, like somebody hasn't paid the electricity bill for so long, well, they'll send a private corporation around with a warrant, so-called warrant, that in theory it's supposed to be signed by a judge. And most of the time, when they come and try and seize part of your property to sell or to evict you, it's not signed by a judge. So people are making a bit more of a stand, and so what happens is when these bailiffs come around to your house, the police is already there, and the police seems to side with them more often than not, and their excuse is that they are there to prevent a breach of the peace. But they do try and sort of bully the people to come out of the house and to let the bailiffs inside. But you're under no obligation to do that if the warrant is actually a false warrant.
Well, in America, we have this protection from illegal or unwarranted searches and seizures and all that, based on our experiences with the Crown. That was kind of, the experiences and the Bill of Rights and kind of the mythos of what is America. Because if they want it, they'll kick it in. They're going to get it anyway. I mean, but then you got to go through all kinds of stuff. And a lot of times, if you're going to be on the list, be on top of the list, it's safer there. I mean, it's got to get a lot of attention. But how much of an impact on the British mind is the examples of America and this idealistic Bill of Rights that we have? Does that play into your mindset at all? Or, gosh darn it, I guess we're going to have to move to America so we got rights? Or, it's not even an issue in their minds?
Well, most of the British public are very compliant and seem to be docile.
Yeah.
They're very, how can I put it? They just seem to be, how can I put it? What's the word I'm looking for? They just seem to be very sort of complacent as well, right? That's most of the people, but there are a growing number of people that are willing to have or to try and push back and challenge a lot of things going on. So that's a good thing to see. It really is.
Well, let me ask Jarmo about that. In Finland, I'm very interested in, people rising up. They're rising up against their oppression. Does Finland feel any kind of oppression? Are they feeling like the government's coming after them now that you're going into NATO and you're on the front lines with Russia and gosh darn it, join the army? How are people reacting to government mandates and like the pandemic and the lockdowns and all this? Has there been a spirit of resistance there that you've noticed?
I can sum it up in one sentence. The government says jump, and most of the people, like 99%, just asks how high.
Yeah.
So the same as in England, compliant, and docile.
Is it a gun thing? I mean, a lot of people, they really want to come after Americans' guns. They think that capability of being able to say no and resist kind of gives us a little bit more, confidence, or screw you, or don't piss us all off, or we'll have another revolution or something. And it seems, I don't know if that's true or not. Probably has some impact in the way Americans think, but I'm wondering if that's what, people in Finland and United Kingdom, if that's what they think. Do they think America is more dissident, more resistant, not as compliant because they have guns? Does that enter your mind at all?
Actually, in Finland, we get like once in a month, once in 2 months, the big news outlets do a piece on the American gun laws and how hideous it is. And actually, I was interviewed by the Finnish broadcast company a few years back, and this issue came up, and the journalists started to give me these, America is like a crazy country, and they got so many guns and so many gun deaths. And I was like, wait a minute. First of all, almost half of the gun deaths in America are suicides. And then there's gun violence. Take those two issues out, and the statistics are totally different. And she was like, but, and I was like, there's no buts. That's how it is. And if you would do your work correctly, you should have known this.
No, they don't care. They got narratives that they're pushing. It's one thing if you look at the democratically run, Democratic liberal parties that are in control of the major cities, like you get, New York, LA, Chicago, that kind of thing, and you take out the gun deaths from them, it's almost none. You know, I mean, America, the vast majority of America, certainly rural areas, they don't know what you're talking about, you know, while they got their rifle in their rear window of their pickup truck. So, you know, this is the inaccurate portrayal of guns and America. I think it's starting to come out. Anybody that really scratches the surface or wants to look, see, that's not really the issue. It's other policies that are the issue. It's pharmaceuticals. It's SSRIs and, you know, kids being drugged up and then they start going off it and they go homicidal, which is one of the freaking side effects listed on these prescriptions anyway. So I'm wondering, in Finland, is there a resistance to the European Union or to NATO? Or like you say, they're just like, just tell us, you know, which flag to salute? I mean, is there any resistance to a world government at all, or do you see you guys are just goose stepping right into it?
Not anymore. Like 10 years ago, there was some. Like I was involved in a party which resisted the European Union, and our view was that Finland should get out as soon as possible. Kind of now when the COVID thing came, and now the Ukrainian war, nobody talks about it anymore. It's just, you know, bend over. Finland has bent over a long time ago. We are a slave country. That's what we are.
Well, how are you lifestyle, financially? Are you, you know, you have a lot of debt? Do you see that it's going to become, you're vulnerable to war and it's going to be a food thing? You know, is there ever going to be any circumstance by which people would, you know, regain their humanity and defend their freedoms and their family? Or they're just, I mean, do you really that cynical to think that the Finnish people are just automatons doing whatever they're told forever?
Pretty much so. And I think it's the Finnish history that tells you that. It's in a way, it's in our DNA. We used to be under the Swedish country, and then Russia conquered us. And then in the early 20th century gained our independence. But right away, we seeked alliance with Germany. And then after the Second World War, we were friends with the Soviet Union, but we were back-channeling all the time the United States and the United Kingdom because we seeked securities because we were so afraid of Soviet Union, which in a kind of way was like a very sensible way to operate. Gotta have like two-lane policy, like keep a friendly face to the Soviet Union, do the trade, take the money, and then kind of seek securities from the Western world. And now when we finally got into NATO, like in Finland, we have this deep generations-long hatred for Russians. And I don't understand it at all, because common Russian is like just like you and me. They are normal people. They have their families. They want the best outcome for their children and so on. Every human is more or less like that around the world.
Yeah, no, that's
but it's the government. It's the government and they screw it up with their propaganda and their war and their need for subjugate other people.
You know, we have a good friend, Alessandro Fusillo from Italia. He's an attorney that has offices in Berlin, Madrid, and in Rome. And as he got older and kind of more retiring, let his law practice kind of, junior partners take care of business, he started Movimento Libertario, the libertarian movement out of Italy, and it was in direct heavy opposition to the lockdowns and the pandemic, and he was defending a lot of businesses that they were trying to close and all that kind of stuff. And he was visiting here in America, in Arizona, and we go out, and then you see people wearing sidearms. It's kind of a, not an uncommon thing in Arizona. And that's right when the AK-47s came out, a bunch of guys in Paris, and they shot a bunch of people. It's like not even a decade ago or so. And when that happened, and I remember him going back and before he started this movement and defending against the pandemic and so on, he wrote an article that the European Union needed a Second Amendment. He goes, if this would have happened in Arizona, they wouldn't have, had a chance to do all this damage. The people be drawn down on them. And in fact, there was a story in Paris, one restaurant, when they racked their AK-47, there were 3 Colombians, with a drug cartel or something that were there in the restaurant, heard it, stood up, and killed a guy. Well, the only place you saw that story was in La Prensa, which was a Spanish-speaking newspaper, and then, of course, in America and in Central America. But the rest of Europe, no, hell no. They didn't want to talk about that one, where it took good guys. Well, I don't know, these guys probably weren't that good. But, other people with guns to go after the bad guys with guns. And that is, so when he started relaying this information to Europe, and it started, this libertarian movement there, it's very popular. It starts to get legs. People are starting to listen. It's starting to become issues in politics. And I'm sure that, is the UK hearing this? Is Finland? Are there cases like this? Are people making these arguments for more freedom? And guns is always, it's like a Vulcan mind meld into the state. It's how they see you. It's a, they'd rather, the 120-pound woman get, raped and killed with her own pantyhose in an alley than her be able to defend against a 220-pound guy. Nope, can't have that. So I'm just, especially with all the immigration that's going into Europe, and I'm sure Finland's starting to feel it, and certainly Sweden and so on, and the UK, and France, sure as hell, what's going on there. You would think that there would be more of at least a discussion about the ability to defend yourself, because the politicians and the law enforcement, it doesn't seem they are, and you look at France and go, damn. So is there any movement towards that, or would you be willing to make that argument, or how is that mindset of the people being able to defend themselves? Is that an issue in Finland? And I'd like to ask AJ how it is in wherever he was from, Belgium? Or,
UK.
Before that, he was
from Belgium.
Yeah, Belgium, and then, of course, the UK. So, Jarmo, what do you think? Is there any kind of movement in that direction?
Actually, in Finland, we have the most guns per capita in Europe, but they're hunting guns. So basically, I've had these discussions with people, and they always take the American model that, that's going to lead to a violence and so forth. But then I say, and this always ends the discussion, is the only thing that will stop a bad guy with the gun is a good guy with the gun.
Yeah.
And that's how it is.
No politician has taken that on. No group, no organization. No. They're just, and the reason is why. The logic doesn't work. The media just will browbeat the crap out of him. They'll take away his parking spot. I mean, what?
Well, the media is one thing, but also that we've been so secure. It's like, living in some sort of like a utopia in that sense. We had some, criminals, but they are so marginal. Like there's no real street violence. Actually, in 2014 was the first like big mass murdering event actually in town where I live, Turku, where this immigrant young boy, 18 years old, stabbed 9 people to death in the middle of the day on Friday. And actually I was driving through the city and I was listening to radio and they were giving this high alert that, get out of the center because they didn't know at the time what was going on. And one of my friends hunted down this guy and police shot him in the leg and he dropped. And he was the first one who was like kicking him in the face and on the chest, because right before that, he stabbed a young lady with the baby to death.
So your friend did what? Did he stop him?
Yeah, well, actually, the police shot him in the leg, and he was like stuttering forward, and he pushed him on the ground and started to give some punches.
Oh, yes. What about you, AJ? Where you came from, wound up in the United Kingdom. Is there any kind of a what do I want to say? Some kind of a symbol? Is there any effort? Is there someone that's making this point, a politician talking about the ability to defend yourself? Is that anywhere in Europe?
In Belgium, I would say it's pretty much in existence, and that's probably historically. I mean, although there are guns there, but not nowhere near to the extent of United States. You're not allowed to carry any in the street, but they do have some shooting ranges and stuff like that. But you need a special permit to have guns at home, and you need to have a good reason as well. That type of thing. But with regards to actually wanting to fight when I say defend yourself from any, like the same as it was sort of similar to the United States, with the idea of defending yourself against a tyrannical government, there is none of that type of thinking at all in Belgium. And it's the same in the UK. Actually, I think in the UK, people are quite, scared of guns, yes, but also I think they find the idea quite uncivilized in a way, I think is the word. I don't know if they'd use that, but that type of word, but that's the sort of feeling I get from it. They don't really understand why Americans have got guns, and I'm just talking about the general population here. And there's always been that debate as to why the Americans have guns, and and some people that don't really get it, they'll probably say, oh, they're just paranoid, and like who would want to shoot them? Like why? Who are they defending themselves against, right? So it's because they don't have the belief that the government could become tyrannical one day, right?
You would think in the United States, the individual against it, and out in the Wild West of whatever in the 6-gun, save the day kind of. I mean, are Westerns popular in Europe, or it's just more guns?
It's hard to say really. I don't. Yeah, they probably would sort of cringe at, oh no, guns. So
they don't remember John Wayne anymore, I guess.
No, that's right. That's right. But there was an incident a while back. Now, don't quote me on this. I think it was maybe in the early 2000s. There was a sort of a case that did sort of hit the headline news. Some farmer, I think he was. There were actually 2 guys that came and walked on his property, and they were actually thieves. They were stealing stuff from his property and inside his property, and I think he shot at them. And I don't know if he killed one of them or he heavily injured them, but I think he may have just heavily injured them, and he ended up going to jail for it. And because you're not, so even if a thief enters your house, a burglar enters your house, you are not allowed to pin him down as such if he is not non-violent, right? If he's just there helping himself to stuff in your fridge, and it's not expressing any violence against you, you are not allowed to actually sort of assault him, if I can put it that way, right? You can't grab him and pin him down and call the cops, right? You've got to let him leave your property.
Yeah, with your TV, I get it. This is why America, that mindset is totally different. They have what they call castle doctrines. It's why I don't have an obligation to retreat. You leave, not me. It's my freaking house, that kind of thing. And it's just, but it's changed. They try and change it. They want us to be more European in mindset. And I wanted to, we had an experience of a young woman that was doing a case study and got paid in university from Finland that came to the Western United States, and she eventually wound up in Arizona. And it was very interesting. She was looking at America through doomsday preppers, National Geographic would have these shows about how crazy Americans are and we're doing it wrong, and how look how stupid these people are. And that was kind of the doomsday prepper message they had anyway, because that would go around the world on cable. And so Europeans would see this, and she wanted to come to America to experience it and ask questions about, how that true and how it worked and what people were thinking. And one thing that she said to me, she goes, everybody wanted to show me their guns. It's like, damn, so we took her shooting. We're going, all right, well, let's go shooting, And the one thing that she was very interested, they were making such a big deal out of the doomsday prepping. She goes, in Finland, that's like life. Man, if you don't make hay when the sun's shining in the spring and summer, you die in the winter. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. So she could see it was propaganda. And I found that very interesting about, someone that took the time to come to America and experience it and understand and have explained from our perspective. And then, of course, she tried to come, to America again the following year. Now, I wanted to ask Justin, in the conversation I've had with these guys, when you guys do your podcast and you're talking, what kind of influence, the perspective you think you bring to it, from, American, and how different were you than them? I mean, how recently has it been that, do you even have a gun? When did you first learn to shoot? At 6 or 16 or 26? What kind of influence do you think you've had on them and them you?
Well, it's certainly a different culture here in America in regards to firearms. I would say in general, they are something that are respected across the board. Nobody would ever dream of going and robbing a gun store. But it's the metaphor of everybody out on the countryside, because just about everybody's armed. Just about everybody has the same capacity to initiate force. So you don't have as many people that are like, I'm going to try my luck. And so I think that's one of the big differences, and the peace of mind element that we have for having a firearm isn't like, ooh, I have power over you. It's like, okay, good. We're all on the same playing field now. And, for me, my grandfather was military police. My father was in the Navy, and my mother was in the services for a little bit. So I grew up around firearms and this sort of militaristic culture. And my father instilled a lot of respect in me for firearms when I was young, maybe 12, 11 years old or so. He had actually gone and got a coconut and set it up on a rock and put wad cutter 9mm ammo rounds in. It's like, okay, go ahead and shoot that coconut. I picked the thickest one I could find at the grocery store so it would best simulate roughly the thickness of a human skull. And so I shot that coconut and it blew to bits. And, in a young mind, it was maybe 2-3 weeks that I was thinking about that experience. Like, wow. That's a lot of capacity to do something. I don't want to mess around or be a fool or be silly with this. This is definitely, if you're going to play with fire, you have to contain it smartly. And so it's that sort of thing. And certainly not everybody gets that experience here in America anymore.
Not as much. I grew up with it, so of course my children are exposed to, my grandchildren, they get their first BB gun at like 5. We're impressing upon them the seriousness of this and the responsibility. But that culture, one, they try and beat it out of you, through indoctrination, education, the school system, the media, television. But it's such a deep part and ingrained in, the reason it's a Second Amendment is to protect the First. Right. It's that kind of mentality that we have. We just had 4th of July, so like dogs are going to get over loud sounds, get over it, but it's a different culture. Do you guys, AJ, what do you think? Is that having children grow up with this culture and to respect firearms or being exposed? Because the vast majority of gun owners, there's more guns in America than there are Americans. You're like states like Montana, they have an average of 29 guns per household. And I go, crap, man, I got to catch up. What the hell, So, and then in other states, here's a good example. I remember in Florida when they started passing concealed carry laws and a lot of stuff that's like a decade or more ago, there was a rash of robberies and murders and mayhem at the airports. And you go, what the crap? How is it that, you had it at airports? What was happening is you had, roving gangs. They knew that somebody that got a rental car at the airport, they were disarmed. So they were, carjacking and robbing people coming from the airport in rental cars. That's why you don't have Alamo and Enterprise and the bumper sticker, it's a rental car, on the cars anymore, because they know that they're disarmed. So they damn, man, that's like a sign I get a freebie, So it really played into the mindset in Florida of passing legislation to allow much more liberal gun laws, and these kinds of examples. They stopped putting the stickers on the rental cars. They stopped, you can take your gun. I've traveled up here with the AR-15. To go shooting. You just have to check it a certain way at the airport and all that kind of stuff. Now, of course, they want to try and make that illegal, but it is a totally different mindset. Do you, AJ, I'll ask Jarmo the same question. Do you see this kind of culture, the kind of experience that Justin had as child abuse? Or that should be standard for everybody around the world? I mean, what do you think of that? Justin, explains a lot of things. I mean, how do you see that kind of story?
Well, for me personally, I think it's great. But my thought about guns, or my relationship, I would say, with guns has evolved over time. So growing up, I didn't see the need at all. I mean, I grew up in a sort of a rural area and, perfectly safe, only a small village, probably about, I don't know, maybe 1,500, 2,000 people at most, just on the outskirts of Waterloo, which, that's sort of south of Brussels in Belgium. And that is, well, you've probably heard of the Battle of Waterloo back in the day with, the British against the French, with Napoleon and Wellington. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there wasn't no need for it as such around my area. But then in Brussels, it was a bit more. I mean, and again, it's probably one of the biggest cities in Belgium. There was, you hear more things about like knives and maybe handguns. There were some people arrested with handguns, that type of thing. But where I was growing up, it was more like, I remember having a pellet gun. Well, not me, but one of my friends had a pellet gun, and his dad would let us use it just to, put a few holes in bottles of water, right? So, completely different type of calibers, just small pellets. But when I just think again about so I'm a 1984 born in 1984, so. The cartoons that we had, mainly, a lot of them were American cartoons. We had G.I. Joe and we had, Thundercats and all that type of thing, right? We had Mask. Well, so we always sort of grew up with that type of mentality where you do see America as the savior of World War II type of thing, right? But obviously, when you dig a bit into history, you do realize it's not quite that. But anyway, it gets really messy. So growing up, the with all the war movies as well in Europe, you sort of go, oh, guns are bad, and you grow up thinking, well, actually not thinking about them at all. But then here we are now. I'm fast forwarding over to the UK here. Here we are today, where I think knives and stabbings are some of the big. Well, I think those are crime number one in places like London and Birmingham as well, another place. So it's different. You see clips every day on the internet with guys with machetes trying to have a go at each other, or street fights, and so there's not, and it's not just one or two people with machetes. There's like 20 people on each side and trying to have a go at each other, whether it's baseball bats and that type of thing. So guns is sort of in existence, although there are gangs of drug dealers that do have guns, but you don't really hear of many shootings at all. So each time in the news, which you could say it's propaganda on the UK side, each time we hear that there's been a school shooting in the US, people are still sort of rolling their eyes and going, oh yeah, here we go again, and when are they going to stop it? And when are they, there's a constant reinforcement that guns are bad, and that
when they stop force feeding them with SSRIs, that's what happened. The Jarmo, same question to you. I mean, it's do you feel child abuse? You got them. Oh my God, there's a bunch of 12-year-olds out there being able to shoot guns, or is that freedom's the answer? What's the question? I mean, what's your mindset?
Well, it depends, because being honest, I think that, small children are different. They have their own personalities. Some are more sensitive and so forth. for example, if a child is sensitive, you can introduce guns when he's a little bit older. So you have to be a little bit, I think, careful when you are introducing guns to children. But in general, I think it's a very good thing, because then they get used to it and they know if you are doing it safely, then you're safe.
Well, it needs to be. I mean, just to interject, it's a parent's decision and the child. I mean, like I got a grandson was trying to get him to, drive the buggy up here, the ATV with me. He goes, nope, not doing it, And after finally I coerced him into going a little bit, and he couldn't not push on the throttle. Okay, you're right. You sit over there. But, it's, I don't want the government making the decision. It's a parent thing. It's a family thing. It's a local community kind of, friends thing. And to have some kind of a blanket authority of some crown just to tell me what to do and how to raise my children, I vote no. I got to vote. I vote no, So this is a different thing. When you do the conversations with AJ and Jarmo, Justin, kind of what are the issues that you guys talk about that are of interest to all of the European countries that they represent, and your perspective here, and what's happening around the world? What's the common thread that you guys spend a lot of time on?
Well, I wouldn't want to be too cliche with it, but it's the subjugation of people, and generally it's the propaganda and false beliefs that are going on in the world to try and change the way that we look at the world, usually in ways that result in governments taking more power. So in acknowledging that governments everywhere are employing propaganda and deception techniques and marketing campaigns for new wars or new drugs or what have you, we're not going to find an easy solution taking down the big players that own the actual capital supply in the world, that are the movers and shakers. We're going to have a much more effective but smaller scale, albeit, time educating as best we're able, what we know about these tools of thinking that have been purposefully disregarded throughout history, but kept for the ruling classes, such as the classic liberal arts, the trivium and quadrivium. Now, we're going through the introduction of our show and getting in a lot of the grammar, getting in a lot of the basics to lay the foundational framework so that we can build on going forward. And that's when we'll really get to deep dive into more specific topics. But for the time being, it's a generalized overview of how are our thoughts and beliefs and perspectives being manipulated, and what can we as individuals do to employ our own consciousness, ability to learn and discern truth, so that we have more freedom and capacity to act in the world for it to respond in a way we'd expect it to.
As a activist and, dealing with media, and we do our own newspapers, magazines, and online information, and my web page, and the radio show, and all this stuff. I as an activist, I got way more movement on legislation, on things changing in my community and state from just general public opinion. And the tools that you're talking about and the methodology for being able to find out how people's opinion. That's why I asked the questions about, from United Kingdom and Belgium and Finland, and how they look at it, and what kind of, like national doomsday preppers, crazy people, the tinfoil hat wearers, the gaslighting that goes on. And I could see from my experience, it has always been the most powerful thing has been just general public opinion. And when you want to see it, just ask Anheuser-Busch on their Bud Light thing. He'll tell you all about it, And then Disney losing $1 billion on their latest movies, and how Indiana Jones went all woke, and you got, Sound of Freedom kicking the crap out of it, at the box office, talking about child trafficking. I mean, it's just... It's really starting to become so obvious that the people really have the power. And it's just where you spend your money, where you spend your time, how you educate your children. That's one thing. Jarmo, answer me this. Is there a homeschooling thing in Finland? Is that even allowed?
I think, yeah, it is allowed, and I've actually looked into this, but it's really hard to find, proper teachers. My daughter goes to Montessori. No, it's Steiner, which is like I don't know what's it called in America.
Yeah, Steiner
It's
Montessori.
Yeah, Steiner school, and that's the best that I found as an alternative to the public school.
So it is allowed. Is it increasing or is it decreasing? They're like, no, you got to get government indoctrination. Okay, we're lightening up a little bit. What's the trend over the last decade?
It's been sort of marginal for decades, and they are not concerned about it because it's such a small amount of the children who go there. But
I don't care about how many. I care about mine.
yeah, exactly. As long as it's there, then I'm happy. But I think it's actually government grants money for that. But now they are cutting back those grants a little bit, little by little by little.
Yeah.
And I take it as a sign that they wanna, suppress it.
Yeah. What about you, AJ? Are you a father or do you have children?
No, not at all. Not at all. Not a father yet. But so, just a shout out to the ladies out there. If you're interested, just hit me up.
Yeah. I'm a good-looking guy. Well, I mean, are you familiar with the educational rules in the UK? Are they, allowing for homeschooling, or is that, you got to pledge to the Queen or King, every morning in the official school or something?
Yeah, the national anthem. No, you don't. No, but well, I know that in Belgium it is allowed, or it was at least, because I have a half sister that actually, funny enough, is living in Arizona. But she, when she was living in Belgium, she's a Mormon, and she had 7 kids at the time. Or was it 6 maybe? I can't remember. I can't count anymore. And she was she was homeschooling them. But she left Belgium because I think she said the United States at the time was a cheaper country, and so it allowed kids to do more activities and that type of thing. So she ended up moving to Mesa, Arizona. I'm not sure. I don't think she's still there anymore, but anyway. And in the UK, it is allowed to homeschool as well right now. And I've just had to look it up just to make sure what you're allowed to teach. And here on the government website, it says that you must make sure that your child receives a full-time education from the age of 5, but you do not have to follow the national curriculum. The council can make an informal inquiry, and they put that between quotes, informal inquiry, to check your child is getting a suitable education at home. They can serve a school attendance order if they think your child needs to be taught at school. So they sort of leave it up to the whoever's on the council, which is your local town sort of thing, officials in the town. They come round to your house, and I'm not sure based off what criteria, they somehow check and gauge to see if your child is getting a suitable education at home. And if they're not, or under their, it seems very subjective to me, but if they're not allowed to, if they don't want you to continue that, they then serve you with a school attendance order. So then by law, you would then have to send your child to school.
Well, in Arizona, it was, I have 4 children, and they went to private school, Christian private school, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade. But when they were young, my oldest, she was in 3rd grade, and it was obvious to me. I'm like, hell no, we're not doing this. And we can thank the Mormons in Arizona. My whole side of my mother's side of family is Mormon. My sister's Mormon, one of my sisters. And they were big on homeschooling, so we can thank them for a lot of the liberalized home education in Arizona. And the way it was worded is you had to inform the school of your intent to homeschool. And I'm like, okay. So I went in the first day of school and, filled out, can I use your little while you were out pink pad of message, whatever? Can I borrow that pen? Oh, yeah, Mr. Hancock, I had a 4th child coming in. I go, woohoo, we're going to make some money. The Hancocks are here. We got some revenue coming. And I just went, to whom it may concern, the Hancock children are no longer attending government schools, signed it, put it down, walked out, never looked back. And they were like, damn it, and they knew me. Leave him alone, man. Just let him go. But and we never went back to public school, and it was just so bad. And this was, God, when was this? Early '90s, and so our children, they never went back to a government school, but it was, I really, if I was able to stay home and that was my job, homeschooling my child, I'd love it. But my wife, that was just not her thing. She couldn't corral them. I can corral them. Sit your butt down. But it is really embraced by our children when they did the mask mandates and doing online from home school and all that crap during the pandemic. 6 of my grandchildren, then we're done. They just started homeschooling and did a lot better job. In fact, my oldest daughter is here with 2 of my grandchildren now up in Washington. They got a 5th wheel because the husband, his job is he can do remotely and makes a good living. Well, they bought a really nice big 5th wheel with 5 pop outs and the F-350 truck to pull it in, and they're traveling the country, having a great time, getting to experience all kinds of stuff, and they homeschool. So it has been a really good option, and just the mentality of Americans thinking, 1, that they have the confidence to do it, 2, that they can't possibly do worse than the indoctrination they're getting in government school anyway, and that we have the laws and the mindset in America that it's not taboo. It's like, well, they must really love their children. They're homeschooling. What would the attitude in Finland for this kind of thing, Jarmo? If you're homeschooling, are they looking at you, you're a crazy tinfoil hat, conspiracy, something, whatever, or you must really love your children, being willing to make that effort? What do you think?
I think that most of would look like, there's something wrong with that family.
Yeah.
They don't trust the government. They are crazies.
Yeah. What about you, AJ? You think the same? They get the kind of same attitude?
I don't. To be honest, I don't think people actually even think about homeschooling at all. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. I think for starters, just geographically, I don't think that the UK has necessarily the open, wild spaces for you guys to. So that there's a housing crisis in the UK, basically, right? There's not enough houses to house people, and the UK would, or so historically, I guess, people do try to or want to buy their own home, but they can't afford them, and so they end up living in rentals. So, in other words, if you were to homeschool, you would have to potentially give up, or one of the parents would have to give up their job, right? But then you can't survive on one income.
Yeah.
And so not everybody's got access to food and land or neighbors with that type of there isn't. It doesn't seem that there's such a huge spirit of or community spirit as such in the UK. We've sort of lost touch with our neighbors. We don't know who they are. But it depends again where you go, right? I mean, you can go in Wales, so that's sort of west of England, and they've got valleys and it's beautiful scenery, and there might be more people in Wales that might homeschool, but again they've got a different language, although they in some areas they do use English, but they've got the Welsh language, and that's just completely different. It's not Latin based, it's not Germanic based, it's a whole different ball game.
Well, what about you,
Yeah.
Jarmo? The attitude of the people is generally influenced by what? Is it Finnish government, Finnish television, Finnish culture, Finnish influences in movies? How do you think Generation Next is the most influenced in Finland?
I think all of those. And also, I always say that we are the 50. How many states are in the United States? 53.
50.
50. We are the 51st state of the United States. We are so heavily influenced by American culture. It's just, it never stops.
Yeah, where are your
Amazing.
westerns? Where's all your guns, man? You ain't got 6 shooters? You're not influenced that much.
Yeah. The problem is that people trust the government here. And I think it's for a good reason because, after the Second World War, basically government was good to people. They had lots of big government-owned companies which offered jobs with good conditions, healthcare and good money. So basically, people a few generations back started to trust government, and that has rolled down to their children and their children and their children.
Is it
And
justified?
now the culture is more like young generations don't care about government anymore. They are just looking at their phones all the time, Black Mirrors. And actually, I was talking to my firstborn, which is like 31-year-old man, and he was telling that lots of his friends, they are learning things from TikTok because there's a lot of like educational short videos, like how to do this and how to do that. And I was like, okay, it's a Chinese company, but if you can get something good out of it, then do so.
Yeah, I think more than anything, TikTok and a lot of these social media, they're just gleaning from us all the data. They screw us later,
Behavioral profiles.
Yeah.
Yeah, Justin, what do you,
Sure.
from your experience being American and what you were brought up and what you thought the truth was, and as you've been exposed to autonomy and talking to people around the world and kind of self-educating yourself even as a young man, how different do you think reality is from what you thought the world was up to your 20? Is it kind of, yeah, it's kind of close, or was it, damn, man, they propaganda the crap out of me? What do you think?
It was 180 degrees. It was a rather stark realization of how upside down the world was. As I was saying, I grew up in a pretty patriotic family, and it was very go America, American values. Like this is the shit right here. We got it. It's the goods. It's America. And so I was like, sure, it's better. It's good enough. I don't know anything different. That's for sure.
Proud to be an American.
Yeah.
Or at least I know I'm free. They played that song during the fireworks last night, and the kids are there, and I'm going,
Oh,
yeah,
really?
for little kids, it's kind of cool, whatever. But as an American, you listen to that, and you're going, really?
We're not free. It's not. And it's like why the Pledge of Allegiance every morning, hand over the heart, looking at a national flag, a national symbol. I pledge my allegiance to the United States. Like, I thought we were a free country.
Yeah, might as well be a king,
Yeah. And of course, 9/11, I was very young, so I didn't have a lot of conclusions to draw or to make on that in my own. It really wasn't until, I was around 19 years old I started to have spiritual revelations. And a lot of those led me to recognize that, thank you, what I was going through was exactly what the church and the culture and the government and just about everything out there in the world did not want me to see. Because what it meant was internal liberation, that I was no longer rulable or influenceable in the same way that I was prior. And it's like, for me at first, it was the churches and the religions. Like, on one hand, sure, it's been a couple thousand years since the dudes that really knew what they were talking about were here talking story about that stuff. And since then, it's been a lot of consolidation and power grab. I was like, wow, if people actually knew how much capacity we have internally through our consciousness and through this, universe that we're a part of. And then it got into the geopolitics, the Cecil Rhodes, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg groups, the not
they, them,
accident,
those.
the they, them, those.
Won't leave us alone.
And then the history on, the actual history and how small these groups were and what tools they used to implore, mainly creating these power differentials through education and finance more than anything. And it's like most of the struggle that I'd gone through in my life was interpersonal relations that would not have been an issue should government schools never have entered the picture. And it's also, the fact that I had to go through some really difficult stuff to find spiritual revelations never would have been an issue if churches hadn't tried to use spirituality as a means of control. and all of this confusion
Bastards.
about why the world is so distraught and seemingly upside down wouldn't be an issue if people weren't trying to propagandize and create other people to believe their ideas for their benefit. And so it was quite a disillusionment and a stark realization, like the world's very upside down.
Did it make you less spiritual or relationship with a deity, or did it strengthen it and just separate from the organized religion? And I'm going to pursue my own personal relationship with, God in my head, or was it, out of heck with all of it? It's all a lie. Or, how did it impact you?
No, I mean it's God. It's definitely God. I mean that's what it all is. But that's a revelation that you have to experience. That's not something that could be that could be spoken so much. I mean I was pretty disenchanted with the church thing. That was the big thing for the first part of my life. And I mean I'd say it's strengthened it, but it takes a very different perspective than what churches are giving out there in the world to understand the full force of the darkness that the world actually has, but also to have enough light and godness to be able to counteract that and still have this perspective that there is going to be a glorious next day to our story in humanity.
That was one thing as a young child, my paternal grandmother, she was, evangelical Christian of, man, you got to, be healed, and it was, they always, as a kid, they scare you, the devil will get you, it's a devil thing. So as I, pictured the devil, it was like I had a sense of peace when I finally realized, I was young, 5, 6, 7 years old or something, that I go, well, if the devil shows up, well, then I guess there's God. Okay, I win. Screw you. Bring it. It would just be confirmation of the other side of the good. So it gave me a lot more peace. And I'm like, okay. So I just remember that being a thing. And then, then as 19, 20, 20, after high school, I read the Bible straight through a couple of times. I did the King James because you're supposed to. And then I go, man, I'm going to do another version because what the hell did they just say? So I did the Good News. Just as, it took me a year or two to go through it. I just read it straight through. And then I had a lot better understanding, of, what, and then like, the series The Chosen, that they do. I thought that was fantastic. I'm really looking forward to into that. But it really is a personal thing. You can't have a collective, belief in a God. I mean, if it's not a personal story or experience, then you're not going to get there, from somebody yelling at you. It's just not going to happen. But in my opinion, so I wanted to ask, Jarmo, a spiritual component to this is we're going up against freaking evil. I mean, these guys, they, whether you believe or not, they do. They just believe in the bad side. I mean, they're wanting their front seat in hell. I mean, it's amazing how bad they are. And they think they get more power on earth by, we need to eat the heart and sacrifice a few more babies. I mean, it's just amazing how bad they are. And you start doing shows and you talk to people, it's like it is a religion with these guys. And so what kind of, spiritual battle, or do you think it's going to be a spiritual battle of just people that are willing to lay down their life for maintaining their spiritual soul or their humanity, that they're, whether you agree with them or not, there are people like that, and thank goodness for them. But, what kind of a spiritual component do you think this battle is going to be over good, evil, good, bad, however you would depict this battle that's coming? Is there a spiritual component to it for you?
Oh, for sure. Definitely. And I laid this rule for myself that I try to be as a good person as you can be every day. And even if you fail, forgive yourself and learn from the mistakes you do. Don't do it twice. Learn from them, and definitely the spiritual side, because good and evil, I mean, that's the game. And unfortunately, the evil ones seem to have an upper hand right now. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to win. The war is not over. It's just, the battle is going on. And basically, the thing that I have with the church is like authority. And I was born in Soviet Union. And I've always thought about that. Why am I so much against authority? And I've traced back the one reason.
So much against what?
Sorry?
You said why you're so much against something. I didn't make out the word.
Authority.
Authority. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I traced it back that as a small child, I heard my parents talking, and they scorned the Soviet Union and the government, and I think that I sucked the information from there that the government and authority is always bad. And later on my life, when I started to study these things, I found out that it's absolutely so. Because nobody should have a power to say what to do and what not to do, unless you are causing harm to another sentient being.
That's one thing. The reason my show is called Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock, other than big Ernest Hancock looks like a John Hancock, that's cool, but it was because the Declaration of Independence really had a big impact on me when I started in the late 80s, man, what the hell? Something's wrong. And it was an economic thing, and my father's company and government, it's a long story, but sent me down this path to understand what the hell is really going on. And I read the Declaration of Independence, Constitution, and the Bill of Rights. I'm not a big, giant Constitution fan. It's like, we're going to rule you because we're going to rule you. That's how we're going to rule you, but at least a Bill of Rights says, yeah, but you're not going to do this, But the Declaration of Independence was a beautiful document to me. And then, of course, they had the Articles of Confederation before they even did the Constitution. But the Declaration made it very clear. The purpose of government is the defense of individual rights. That was never any other country did that. It was always for the fatherland, or your allegiance to the king or the government or the state, or we're going to save the ship of state. The Titanic's going down. We got to save the ship. Screw the people, but we're going to save the ship. And I'm like, no. The Declaration of Independence makes it very clear. The purpose of government is the defense of individual rights. When it doesn't do that, it's time to alter or abolish. It's your right, your duty. I'm like, woo, sign my butt up, man. I vote that. So this has been a totally different mindset. And in that spirit is where you get the Bill of Rights and, a lot of things that they experienced. They want to make sure government never had the power to do. And one of the reasons why the First Amendment is the freedom of conscience. The freedom, to think what you want, to say what you want, to worship what you want. And as long as you're not violating someone else's pursuit of happiness, you have the right to life, liberty, and your pursuit of happiness. Now, of course, Locke, was talking about property. But the pursuit of happiness, I find that a very powerful thing. As long as I'm not violating someone else's pursuit of their individual happiness, what the hell they care? Anybody trying to get me to do whatever is just trying to control me or BS me. So, the spiritual component is an individual thing. It's not really a collective thing. It can't be. So, AJ, in your experience in Belgium and the United Kingdom, what do you think the power of faith, or power of a spiritual standard, or confidence in God's on your side kind of thing, how do you think that will play into the future opposition to they, them, those won't leave you alone?
Oh man, what a question. So yeah, I was sort of sitting back there and listening to all of you there. There's a few things that sort of came to mind, just historically in the first place as well. So what came to mind is, so when you were talking about, how they sort of want your soul, and they sort of want to capture that, and they want to control your behaviors and all these type of things. What came to mind was a book written by a guy called William Sargent. It's a book called Battle for the Mind, and it has a subtitle, a physiology of conversion and brainwashing, how evangelists, psychiatrists, politicians, and medicine men can change your beliefs and behavior. And so that was written 1957. And you've got to realize that the guy, he did all sorts of experiments on prisoners of wars, but also people that sort of came back with PTSD. And this is during the war, so World War II and after. So the guy was sort of, you could say, sponsored by the likes of the Tavistock. And so it leads into, the whole MK Ultra thing as well, and all these, LSD and that type of thing. So I think what people got to so with regards to the spiritual aspect of it, these techniques of what we call today brainwashing have been around, or at least the knowledge has been around for a very long time. And so it seems that that's the eternal battle, right? It's the good versus evil, and there's always seems to be some people, the they, them, those, that are there studying every move that you make, so that they can then use those new or refine the techniques to capture you and control you even more. And that sort of leads me to even talk about today when you see movies like Ready Player One, right? So that was 2018, I think that movie came out, Steven Spielberg movie, where you've got the similarities to the metaverse. You've got like this VR goggles on your face, and that's how people sort of should live in this virtual world. And I sort of liken that type of thing because they're battling for your attention and battling for your mind and your behaviors and everything, and they're harvesting your data as a new form of black gold in a way, right? So it's a new gold, right? Data is the new sort of gold. This whole VR thing is basically, I call that the soul catcher, because they're absorbing your whole mind and your whole what ultimately is your whole reality into this computer system, and what the absolute evil people will think, we'll try and make you think that they can upload your brain to the Borg sort of thing, and and you'll live a happy ever after in the machine sort of thing.
You walk around with a smile on your face and goggles on,
Yeah. But so to try and sort of loop back to people's beliefs in God or spirituality in the UK, it's a tough battle again. In terms of history, you have the Protestants as well, and the Catholic, and all the sort of the messy wars that were going on as well. But to give you an idea of where the state of affairs are, I could say, with regards to a religion or the church, they locked down. The churches are around the corner from where I live. They've locked down during the pandemic. They didn't open up, especially, and those that did, sort of when they sort of started easing the restrictions, those that did open up, you had to at the entrance of the before walking into the church, on the steps walking into the church, they'd ask you to wear a mask, and they'd want you to sanitize your hands, and actually even because they had this, the UK government came out with this app, track and trace app, where you had to sort of register your name down with every entity, or like if you walked into a bar, they would want to take your name and your phone number, so that they would then log that with the app, so basically with the government. And if somebody tested positive for COVID further down the line, they could link the two numbers, or to sort of say that, you were in close contact with this person, therefore you now must lock down or self-isolate again, right, for yourself. So the churches, that's the type of thing that they were doing during the lockdowns. But equally, when this Ukraine thing started, there's a church around the corner from where I am. They raised the Ukrainian flag in their car park. And so I just sent them an email. I said, it's okay. I don't like war, no matter where it happens or who initiates or who doesn't. But I said, why are you raising it specifically for Ukraine right now? There's also there was war in Yemen, or being bombing. There's still things going on in Syria, and I haven't seen you raise a flag for those poor people over there. So you have again this propaganda machine that comes into the spiritual realm that's trying to take over your church as well, and then again it's like it's top down really. The churches seems to have bowed to scientism and this belief. But so anyway, so I sent an email to this church around the corner, and the reply I got was that, He was very straightforward, very, very square in his reply. He said, yes, you're absolutely right to be pointing out the hypocrisy of it all. And yes, of course, it is political. But don't worry, because in a month's time, when it's, we'll be raising St. George's flag, which is the flag of England, because, we had some sort of celebration. And what else did he say? He said something like, oh, and of course it's political because you only have to listen to the Archbishop of Canterbury every time he speaks. It's nothing but nonsense that comes out of his mouth. And indeed, the Archbishop of Canterbury is sort of the head of the Church of England, if I'm not mistaken. And he promotes gay marriage and LGBT and all this type of stuff. And so, I mean, I don't know if we want to get into that. It's a messy can of worms. But back to the schooling system, they are sort of harvesting or trying to.
Well, so what you're saying is that the response you got from the church is, yeah, you're right, but so I mean, we're going along, getting along, get over it. I mean, that was kind of the attitude.
Yeah, exactly. And so I sent that to a few friends of mine that are church followers and whatever, and they were absolutely disgusted by it. So yeah, I mean, even I'm not. I believe in some form of a creator. I believe in a creator of some form, or whether it's. Well, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's God or the bearded man or Christianity, that type of thing.
Or the force will be with you.
Yeah, exactly. So even I am disgusted when I hear these types of things or these types of responses from the church that are just bowing to scientism.
Yeah, Yamo, how was the church involved in controlling the public mind in Finland? Did they get involved?
You mean like in this virus thing or in general?
Yeah, the war, Ukraine, the pandemic, what? I mean, I remember it was freaking COVID until Ukraine, and man, they spun on a dime so fast your head spun. You go, whoa, wait a minute, aren't we? I thought we were all going to die from COVID yesterday. All of a sudden that's not a thing anymore. I got to change my mask for a flag. Do I get a mask that's in Ukrainian colors? I mean, you know what? Are you going to make a transition here a little bit, or is it an overnight thing? So I'm just wondering what role the church had in the general public opinion.
They go along with the government because government has given them the right to tax the church members. So they are bound.
Okay, wait. You mean tax? It comes out of their paycheck, from their employer kind of thing?
They have to pay, I think, this 1.5% of the income per year to the church.
Have to. It comes out of their check, or they're writing them a check, or how's this done?
It comes out from the check.
Ooh, that's the way to do it. Get government collected for you. Boy, that's Christian. Wow. Okay. Damn. I would definitely focus on that one. That's awesome. This is I'm this has been a great conversation. We got to wrap it up. I want to give you guys an opportunity to give your final statement on a lot of the things that kind of the gist that we're talking about. I was looking forward to doing this because I know Justin fairly well and the kind of stuff that he talks about. That's why we haven't talked to him that much. But but the getting a perspective from Finland, Belgium, United Kingdom on some of the issues that are common to all people. We're having somebody else. That's why when I started doing radio in 2003, I would go two things that kind of struck me right off the bat when I started. I go, it's declare your independence with Ernie Hancock, and they go, you want me to declare my independence with you? Can I do it by myself? What kind of crap is that? And I'm going, okay, good point. Declare your independence, and you don't even need a government form. I mean, you just got to do it on your own. The other thing was, you always say, well, they this and they that. Who are they, you conspiracy nut? Who are they? And I'm going, good question. Who are they? And I'm like, there are those that just want to be left alone, and there are those that just won't leave them alone. That's who they, them, those are. And that's how I identify these guys. They're whoever the heck they are, whatever entity, government, church, anybody, they're the ones that just will not leave me alone. And that's how I identify They, them, those are the ones that won't leave me alone. They're imposing their will on me. They're coming after me. They're not letting you. You're not allowed. You got to get a permit. I got a shiny badge and a clipboard and a fine hat and this here available gun, behind me with this guy that's going to make you. And so that mindset and having this conversation with people from around the world, and even a young man like Justin going through this and becoming aware of this kind of stuff, how common, are these sentiments, especially on things where America's real different, like on gun rights and so on. It's, where's the common threat? What is the common solution? How best for us to be our best selves, to be human, to be fully human, to be self-sustaining, functioning, to aspire to our compassion and love and concern and empathy for our fellow man, woman, and for the generation next. How to emphasize and promote that. What is it that's in our way? How are they in our way? Is it just government in general? Is it, is it forces of, we're going to, they go, well, do we need nationalism? And it's just half a breath away from globalism? I mean, what's the difference? So, in that context of us just understanding each other, and fortunately you guys, speak English and I can understand you, this is, I wanted to give you, time to comment, say whatever you wanted, but I wanted to make sure that you shared with the audience your perspective, what you think, the real problem is and what the solution is. Would you do that for me? Either one of you, whoever talks first wins. Go. And you lose. All right, go ahead, AJ. You go first.
So the way I sort of conduct myself, and I haven't found a better way. So if anybody out there wants to give me a better way, please share. But so the way I sort of conduct myself is I practice personal responsibility. So it's introspection. It's looking at yourself and trying to figure out why you behave in the way you behave, and practice restraint as well, right? So I think, I don't know if anybody was listening to Grand Theft World, but Tony Myers, right, who's done a lot in terms of philosophy and Greek philosophy. It goes all the way back to the ego, right? It goes all the way back to the Aristotle and all this type of thing. So, and I haven't even looked into this stuff, but I've just sort of stumbled across it through every walks of life. So the commonalities of all these topics that we've discussed this evening or in this podcast, whether it's education, it's responsibility, right? You have to act responsibly and go out there and learn the stuff to be able to navigate the world. Gun ownership, again, it's responsibility and it's restraint. All these sort of things, and in the spiritual world as well. We all sort of have our own internal demons, so to speak, that we've got our own internal battles that we've got to fight against. So again, you've got to practice restraint. Don't let the green-eyed monster take over you, for example. So that's the way I sort of conduct myself, and that's the way I sort of see things. And so far, it seems to work. So yeah, and I guess that's what being autonomous.
So practice restraint. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, exactly.
Rule number one, don't be a dick. All right, thank you for that, AJ. Jarmo, go ahead and say your name. Am I saying it right?
Jarmo.
Yeah. Okay, roll the R a little bit. Jarmo. All right, Jarmo, go ahead and kind of give your impression of solutions, the real problem and conversation we had today.
Well, solutions to the bigger problem like government and this whole structure and system is that I'll give you a small true story of what happened in the Eastern Bloc when the Soviet Union was around. In Czechoslovakia, these art people started to hold these meetings where they ignored all the rules. They were like underground galleries and so forth. And people got together and they started talking, and it formed these small communities all around the country. And in the end, the movement spread to the whole country. And basically, the common people started to laugh at the government. They didn't care anymore. It was a joke. And I don't know if it's related or does it have any, it's just a coincidence that only like 5 years later, the whole Eastern Bloc collapsed because it spread out. People just laughed at the system.
So after the Biden administration, we got 5 years and it's over.
Hope so. Hope so. I mean, just ignore the government. Do your own thing. Pay taxes as little as possible. Don't support the system. Be autonomous. And also, when you interact with other people, do others as you would like done to you. That's a really good guideline. Don't be a dick.
Yeah, that's a good. We have, a festival. It's called Jackalope Freedom Festival in northeastern Arizona. It's just, a bunch of people just go camping. They're out in the forest. It's in its 12th year, and nobody was in charge, so everybody is. And it's just going camping. The more you try and organize it, the worse it gets. So that was kind of the point that we were making, and we had 2 rules. One, don't camp there's a meadow there that gets really muddy and you get stuck, and I'm sick of getting people out. So we were like, don't camp in this part of the meadow over here. And rule 2 was don't be a dick. I mean, that was, well, what do we got? Don't be a dick. That's the only rule, And, that's kind of subjective of what that means, but people know what it means. It's just, don't be intimidating to someone else. Don't cause someone else to stumble in their pursuit of happiness. It's really a simple thing. One of the things that we're really pushing, or my wife and I are building our home in the desert in Arizona starting this fall, and we're really promoting the idea of occupy the land. OccupyTheLand.org, and Justin's helping with the site on that. We're working on that. And we've been working on this for a while, and we're about ready to launch it. And the one thing that has been of interest to me, everybody wants to do intentional communities. Join our intentional community. And I'm like, I got 3 questions. What do I have to do? What can't I do? And what's your conflict resolution? And they don't have answers to that. It's amazing that they have, no, we'll just, we'll work it out. Kind of, no, when you work it out, let me know, But so we're really starting to emphasize, James Corbett and I do a regular show, and just last night we were talking about this, and I'm like, it's unintentional communities. I need something that's unintentional. You have your own private property. You're taking care of it. This is mine. On this side of the fence, mine. On the other side, not mine. This, mine. Not mine, mine. I mean, that kind of thing. And then it just kind of develops. As long as I got mine, and you're an add to a community of other people, then you're invited, you're embraced, you're encouraged. You're an add, not a subtraction. So I see unintentional community really is going to start to be a buzzword, because I can watch, and here it comes. But I can see that this my collective beat up your collective against collectivism. I mean, I just don't see it happening. And my experience, and I've given a lot of people a chance to come up with your plan, and they haven't been able to convince me. So I'm thinking natural, spontaneous order, unintentional community of you taking care of you and yours, and it'll just form on its own. That's kind of where we're going with this, and we'll work on it that way. That'll be my say. Justin, solution, the real problem, what are we were talking about today? What say you, man?
Yeah, I mean, just look at all the ways that they have taken away our competence from us. A church or religion stands in between us and God. Taxes stand in between us and the fruits of our labor. Property taxes, the same. These are the reasons why we have private ownership as the foundational cornerstone
No,
of
you're
freedom.
going to own nothing and be happy.
Well, they would hope so. And
Right.
that's where it's collectivism and individualism. It's like they take away our individual essence, ability, and strength in favor of a nameless and faceless collective. It's like all they can do is steal from us what is rightfully our birthright and deceive us that we even had it in the first place. And so if we step out of this idea that becoming a collective to save the world from global warming is therefore going to allow us to return back to individuality, like we're misled if we think those things. Like the solution is to wake up in our own minds, to realize that they are explicitly deceiving us. They've been doing it historically for a very long time, and they don't have any inclination to stop, because if they started telling the truth, we would all just ditch them instantly.
They're going to start telling the truth, because I don't think they are. I don't think we can count on that. You know, and the one thing I'd like to leave on this is that I believe that the future is all about credibility. It's who do you believe? What do you believe? And as time goes on, there are going to be people such as you guys that will pop up, and through your neighbors and friends and listeners and family, that they'll, you know, they didn't lie. You know, I mean, all these other guys, they're lying sacks of snot and they weren't right. You know, that you come out as being credible, because I don't see uncredible people that are going to be listened to. I mean, it's just so proven. Yeah, but they had a shiny tie and a really nice studio and a big megaphone, and they're credible. They got a lab coat on. I mean, you know, that kind of thing. I don't see that anymore. With the internet, it's changed dramatically. And being an activist since the late '80s, and hell, I was your age, you know, when I started, and it became very quickly obvious to me that they were lying sacks of snot, and they didn't deserve any of my brain cells, you know. And as time goes on, the people that told the truth, the people that were accurate, even though, you know, a lot of times they, you know, at least told the truth as they perceived it, and then, you know, would change their mind when they were genuinely seeking the truth, and they wanted to share the truth with their family and their friends. And as truth will always reign, it has staying power. And that's why I'm such, you know, an advocate and adamant about storing the data that they can't delete, because they don't delete the lies, they delete the truth. It's 1984, Fahrenheit 451, Brave New. I mean, that is the point, is to make sure that the truth isn't out there. And as long as you share, you know, certainly just with any effort, you know, that you're not lying, you're not being deceptive, even though you may not be completely accurate, you know, and then you acknowledge when you're wrong, you have credibility. And I see autonomy and a lot of what you guys are doing, and the people that I've associated with them, and I'm good friends with Richard Grove and Lisa. You know, this is for a long time, God, since '09. And it has been my pleasure to see this focus on truth and the critical thinking and the skills it takes to, you know, relay this to others, and the influence that you have. It gives me optimism for the future, but I don't think it's going to be easy. You know, it's going to be a food thing.
It's going to hurt.
Yeah, it's going to hurt, you know, and it's got, you know, last night we were at the 4th of July thing. Jordan Page, we're hanging out, we're talking, and he was talking about his group of friends and families, and they do church there. And he goes, you know, it feels like God shows up, you know, and I'm going, oh, there's your song right there. God shows up here. You know, God shows up. Well, guess what? America, God shows up. Europe, God shows up. God's showing up. Here comes the song, man. I can feel it. God shows up. Well, he showed up today, and I had a good time talking to you guys. AJ, Jarmo, thanks for coming on. It's been, you know, great to get your perspective on this, and I'll have the show up, and you guys can share it or not, you know, whatever. I think it's going to be a good ad into the network, and I'll do some editing on it. We'll have, a good presentation for you to use. Thank you for coming on and sharing with me. Anything else you want to final say? Give out a web page or a contact information on either of you guys?
No, basically, but I want to thank you, Ernest, for this opportunity, and I want to thank you also all the great work you have done and keep doing it, and you have changed a lot of lives. I'm sure about that, and you're a perfect example how to live your life purposefully. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much, AJ.
Yeah, same as Yarmo. I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. But yeah, no, thank you for having me on. And anybody else that's listening out there, just hang in there. It is painful to go through all this stuff, but ultimately, it is well worth it. You know, you'll find your feet in the world, and you'll be better off for it.
And you have people like you guys around the world. That's one thing. As a young man in the late '80s, it took God probably a couple of years before I met my first libertarian. I never even knew the word. You know, I'm going. You know, I thought, God, am I the only one that sees this? The rest of the whole freaking world crazy? So it's really good that you guys have found your each other, and that you have an example around the world that if you're starting to think this way and you're seeing, man, if something, is anybody else seeing this? Yes, they are. You're not alone. Peace. Thanks for coming on, guys. Talk to you again soon, I hope.